Quorum Radio, baby. Bill McIntosh, Quorum Radio, a production of Ocaso Media.
12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Altitude's 2 miles. Velocity 2,195 feet per second.
Quorum Radio here with Dave Workman of the Second Amendment Foundation. He's a spokesman for that organization, SAF.org, and is an award-winning career journalist and senior editor of the Gun Mag, formerly Gun Week, and he also writes for Liberty Park Press, Conservative Firing Line, and my favorite, Ammo Land. He's also the communications director for the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. Dave Workman has also authored op-ed pieces in several major newspapers, such as the Chicago Tribune, Seattle Times, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Dave has also co-authored 7 books with Alan Gottlieb, founder of the Second Amendment Foundation. Well, Dave Workman, good morning. Somewhere from Pacific Northwest. Is there any gunfire?
Not yet.
Oh my gosh, man. How far away are you from the action?
About 5 miles as the crow flies. Seattle is just across Lake Washington from my office. Okay.
All right. Well, great. Well, you had great articles in Ammo Land. I love that publication. They had it's so amply, so richly documented. And the first thing that comes across to me, of course, is the upheaval in the Pacific Northwest in the city of Seattle, and also, of course, the city of Portland, Oregon, the biggest city in Oregon. And what I see in Seattle was 15 cops were assaulted by baseball bats. Huh?
Well, yeah, I'm not exactly sure what was going on there. I know that a dozen or 15 officers were hurt over there in a kind of a riot situation. At least that's what's been reported. I know that down in Portland, Oregon, there have been police officers injured. These guys are not protesting police brutality. They're not protesting for Black Lives Matter. They're just really out there to destroy private property, to attack police, and they think they're going to get away with this stuff. Since I took a look at what's going on here in the Northwest, and the Northwest really is under siege. Portland and Seattle, the voters there, the far left nutball voters, they dominate politics in Oregon and Washington, and that's really not fair, because if you look around most of Washington, once you get outside of Seattle and away from the I-5 corridor, it's a fairly purple, if not bright crimson red state. And the same goes for Oregon. Once you get it away from I-5 corridor down there, get out of the Willamette Valley, you're going to find a lot of people who are conservative. They don't want any trouble with these guys. They just want to be left alone. And yet, here we are. We see these people. They've hijacked the Black Lives movement and Black Lives Matter movement, and they're using that as an excuse to riot. That's not protected by the First Amendment.
And are police allowed to use deadly physical force if one of their fellow officers is assaulted with a baseball bat? I mean, is that something that could happen, or they're just under such strict orders regarding engagement that they never do that?
Well, the rules of engagement have been stomped on pretty good by the federal government. This started back in the Obama administration when there was a Justice Department investigation launched about the use of force by Seattle police officers. And I think it has seriously changed the dynamic and the use of force in Seattle. I know that the mayor and the city council have not wanted the police to use crowd dispersal stuff like flashbangs and tear gas, all of that less than lethal stuff. But frankly, Bill, when a bunch of guys show up and they're carrying baseball bats, they're not on their way to a baseball game. They're down there. They're down there to use those things as a weapon.
Amazing. Of course.
And
break windows.
well, yeah, break windows or break arms and legs. It depends on what happens. Now, in Washington State, I'm not sure about the statute in Oregon, but in Washington State, there is a specific statute dealing with the use of force by police officers. There's a separate statute that deals with the use of force, lethal force, by private citizens. And there's a caveat in state law, and it's the only state in the union that has this, that says expressly the use of force by private citizens is broader than the use of force by police officers. The legislature recognizes that disparity, and it's been that way for years. If someone was attacking me with a baseball bat, he'd risk getting hurt really bad. That as long as these people are taking the streets, the Pacific Northwest really is under siege.
Right, and this was no attempt. I mean, isn't there any pushback from citizens who run businesses and say, "Hey, business is horrible"?
Well, yeah,
nobody wants to leave.
Sure, there's pushback, but it's almost as though the city council and even the mayor have deaf ears on this. Down in Portland, we saw, I think, night before last, when Mayor Ted Wheeler went down and tried to, link up with the protesters, tried to appeal to them, and they booed him and told him to go home.
Oh, my gosh.
And then he got tear gassed on top of that.
Appeasement doesn't work, Ted Wheeler. My gosh, I mean, the federal law enforcement are your friends, man. I mean, gosh, this is what happens. You create a vacuum, and you let the temper tantrum, dissipate itself. Supposedly, it doesn't happen. It just gets worse. So we've got 50 straight days of rioting.
55.
Right?
It's 55, I think, down in Portland. And we've had demonstrations almost every day for the last 50 plus days in Seattle, too. And some of those demonstrations actually turned into riots. This was planned property destruction. And of course, the whole world knows about the Seattle CHOP zone. They seized six blocks of city property for 16 days. And it was only after 2 homicides that law enforcement moved in and shut that thing down and regained the streets. Right.
So, is this enough? I'm sure that since then we've seen enough violence to be able to justify that the police go in again. And also, I think you can appreciate the fact that it's a great way to camouflage yourself. If you're somebody who wants to be a bomb thrower or destroy windows or beat people up, it's great to be there with a bunch of, quote, peaceful protesters to kind of hide among them as a shield. I think this is all part of the...
Well, yeah, and anybody who wants to get on Ammo Land and read my story about this, how the Northwest is under siege, they're going to get a pretty good view of what's going on up here. And we've been watching this up close and personal for more than a month and a half now. And quite frankly, a lot of the people are getting tired of it. And I saw a post, I think it was on Facebook this morning about 3 a.m., when I took my first look, and one guy chimed in. He said, well, if somebody comes after me with a baseball bat, I'll shoot him.
Of course.
This is getting serious. I'm going to make a little bit of a transition here.
Sure.
A lot of people in Seattle want Seattle to become just like Chicago. And
my gosh.
As I wrote in the other story that you wanted to talk about, the body count in Chicago, Amoland, Freddie Riel, who's the head honch at Amoland, wanted me to jump into that the other day, and I did. And it's a fascinating and it's a grim story. They have more homicides in the city of Chicago in any given year than some whole states report to the FBI Uniform Crime Report.
That's astonishing.
Well, it is astonishing, and it's terrible, too, because a lot of these people that are getting shot, they just want to mind their own business, and they just want to kind of badoop along through life. The story that I did on the Chicago thing was I guess the catalyst was the funeral drive-by shooting the other day.
I saw the video.
Yeah,
from AMOLED.
Yeah,
15 shot at funeral drive-by.
Yeah, 15
Amazing.
people shot. And as I pointed out in the story, the irony was that those people were attending the funeral of a guy who'd been shot.
Oh my gosh!
And,
I mean, unbelievable. I mean, you know, and what I sense, what I fear, is that this is just a case of gangland violence, setting up a funeral for more gangland violence for a reprisal. You know?
Yeah, you know, I tell you, if an undertaker wanted to go into business, he'd set up shop in Chicago. And that's not I'm not trying to be funny about that.
It's true.
I'm serious about this. And then, you know, back again to Seattle, people in Seattle think that they want to be like all the other big cities in the country, but they don't seem to get it, that with all of these goofy things that they want to do, there's going to be violence and crime that comes with that. They want to get rid of the police. They're going to have a lot more violence and crime because there won't be anybody to stop the bad guys.
Of course not. Now President Trump tries to step into the breach. He offered to send 175 federal officers to the city, and according to what CBS News said, Mayor Lori Lightfoot tweeted, quote, "Under no circumstances will I allow Donald Trump troops to come to Chicago and terrorize our residents." Oh my gosh, you know, you go to a funeral, 60 shots are fired at a funeral. Isn't that enough terror, Lori?
Well, yeah, that's exactly what I wrote in the AMOLED story, too. It looks like the citizens in Chicago are already being terrorized by the gangbangers. I mean,
yeah, sure.
This is insane.
Yeah, it is. And I think what's happening is that basically the far left has gotten really engaged with the outlook of perpetrators who commit crimes. And that's where their thoughts are. What is it? How will this play out to perpetrators? They'll feel antagonized. That means more violence. So I think that's what we're seeing. They're afraid that this might rile things up. But the city of Chicago was already completely, you know, in chaos. Some parts I would imagine are calmer than others. But so I mean, does Lori Lightfoot have the city police of Chicago ready to round up federal agents? I mean, how happy are the police of Chicago, I wonder, with Lori Lightfoot's quote leadership, which is not a leadership at all. It's she's creating a tremendous vacuum again, like the people in the mayor Wheeler of Portland or Durkin in Seattle. You know, mm-hmm. Is there anything, any pushback from the Chicago police, and what is their mentality? I wonder.
Well, I can't imagine that their morale is very high right now because, you know, the street cops, and I've known in my career a lot of street cops, and they're basically really good people. They're dedicated. They want to do the job. They love putting bad guys in jail, which is, you know, really what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, sure.
And they feel abandoned by the elected officials in all three of these cities. Who want first to respond to the shrill of the mob. They are buckling under to the demands to reduce police budgets by 50%, eliminate the police, bring in social workers to calm down people who are committing crimes. It's that kind of nonsense that's going to get somebody killed. And yet they'll turn around, and you know what they'll do? They'll blame, as Lightfoot did, they'll blame Donald Trump or who's ever in power,
right? And
say, "Gee whiz, it's because you don't support strong gun laws."
Oh, of course, sure.
That is mind-numbingly stupid, but
right.
People believe that stuff.
Well, sure. Well, stop and frisk seems to work. It may be controversial. I mean, if you have certain gun laws that, a gun somebody has to have a permit. And if you stop somebody for running a stop sign, gets out of his car and you frisk him, you find out he has a gun. Guess what? Well, there you go. another gun off the street because good chance in Chicago, it's probably not by somebody who's got a permit to have it. So there you go. Or he's a felon. You shouldn't have a gun, right? So this all brings us to the question of, there's also this tremendous surge in people buying guns. We've talked about this before, Dave. A friend of mine's a former New York City cop, honor legion policeman with a doctorate, and he says, this is really encouraging. I'm a little bit worried that the increase in gun purchases is all because of just ordinary citizens trying to protect themselves, which is a good thing. But I also think that maybe you have people, straw buyers, purchasing weapons for Antifa and Black Lives Matter. Have we seen any evidence of that? I mean, is that too alarmist?
Well, I haven't seen any evidence of them actually trying to buy guns because there has been some evidence that some of the Antifa people have wanted to break into gun shops and steal firearms. In fact, I know one gun shop operator down south of Seattle here in one of the bedroom communities who's got a gun shop down there, and she has been there every night for the last 2 months. She's got staff there during the daytime, and in the evening, her parking lot is host to several volunteers who are her customers and friends. They hang around out there to make sure that the Antifa thugs can't break into her gun shop.
It's amazing, huh?
Well, yeah, it is. And I think this whole thing has been kind of a phenomenon that a lot of people on the left weren't really ready for, and my response to them is, well, too bad. That's what the Second Amendment's all about. But we've seen, and I wrote about this at Ammo Land too here a couple of weeks ago. We've seen communities like Snohomish, Washington, Kirkland, Washington, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, places like that where armed private citizens have turned out to protect their small town business communities by discouraging these thugs, these gangs of destroyers from committing any violent acts. And these guys know that the police aren't going to harm them to the extent that they may go to the hospital or something. But they can't take that chance with armed private citizens who do have a bit different outlook, and they have, I think, a different statutes that guide their use of lethal force. And that bothers them a little bit, because what they may get away with from a police officer who has certain rules of conduct, they tangle with some private citizen who's just trying to protect a building, his business. They could be in for a pretty good thumping.
How ready are governors across the country with contingencies to contact the National Guard? And I'm afraid that they're not really thinking carefully about what the potential for violence. We saw what happened in Stone Mountain when they were starting to intimidate motorists demanding reparations, which is just basically robbery, So let's see what happens on that. And I don't know if you have any comment about that, but
well, yeah, there is one thing, Bill, that we got to keep in perspective. Earlier this year, down in Richmond, Virginia, 22,000 armed private citizens descended on the state capitol to oppose gun control. Nobody suffered so much as a scratch, but those are the good guys. We have to separate the good guys from the bad guys, and we've got to try to get the people in government to understand the difference. And right now, they don't. They think the bad guys are the good guys, and they think the good guys are the bad guys.
Yes, light is darkness and darkness is light. Well, Dave, it's always good to have you on WRMI Quorum Radio. Hope we can do this again. Dave Workman is a spokesman for the Second Amendment Foundation, SAF.org. So check it out. Support the Second Amendment Foundation. It's involved on the front lines defending your rights to keep and bear arms. Dave, thanks so much for being on WRMI Quorum Radio.
The Judicial Conduct Act is as important to freedom as the Declaration of Independence, the Federalist Papers, the Constitution, and its Bill of Rights. This explains why, in the 40 years since the 96 Congress and President Jimmy Carter gave birth to the Judicial Conduct Act, 13 U.S. Attorneys General, countless White House counselors have worked together to conceal the Judicial Conduct Act's power and monumental importance from both the presidents they serve and the American people. White House Counselor Pat Cipollone and U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr know that the Judicial Conduct Act grants the American people the immense power to deal with fraudulent or criminal conduct by judges directly. Tragically, Chief Justice John Roberts has turned this law upside down to protect judicial corruption. The Judicial Conduct Act is the only way to protect our Constitution and our freedoms. To stop this attack on American liberty, go to judicialconduct.org.
And now this for Grandmaster J of the NFAC from former African slave Bol Gai Deng from South Sudan. I want to ask you a question. Since slavery is still going on now in Africa, in the Sudan, where there are tens of thousands of Africans that are today, 2020, in slavery, what do you have to say to Grandmaster J?
John Fitzgerald Johnson.
Grandmaster J has said that they're tired, they're sick and tired of oppression. What invitation can you offer Grandmaster J about going to Sudan and going to Africa to free the black people in slavery today?
I would ask him if he's very concerned about the slavery. I think he should contact me and my team so we can go to South Sudan or maybe go to Sudan and help those who slave. And also we can go to Libya. That's where this problem is. And also they can also learn about the history of the slavery and with facts, not just with the assumption, because a lot of the people here in the diaspora, and we call it diaspora actually, people that live in America or maybe in Europe, a lot of these people, they took information based on what they read and what they get online, but it's not the real facts because they never speak to African have been enslaved. It's slavery captivity, maybe an auction. People like me who actually lived it. People like me are witness, beating and put the shame in the hand. I'm not talking about my grandfather.
And when I say us, I'm talking about you too. No matter where you are in the world, I'm talking to you too. The time for us to stop treating each other like we're different. The time for us to stop hating someone just because they fly under a different flag, when we all fly under the melanin flag, when we're all part of diaspora. Most people don't know that the word diaspora is Greek. It literally means the scattering flag. When we're all part of diaspora, when we're all part of diaspora.
Quorum Radio, baby. Quorum Radio, WRMI, on with Bol Gai Deng, who's currently campaigning for president of South Sudan and lives currently in the United States. He's lived here since 1999, and for him, life in the United States is a huge change, because as just a young boy, Bol Gai Deng, his small Awal village was attacked early one morning by thousands of mujahideen on horseback armed with AK-47s and with machetes. They killed the older males and many of the women. The rest, along with the children, were beaten, rounded up, and forced to march on foot to Dihen, Sudan, near Darfur. A few weeks later, 7-year-old Bol Gai Deng was sold to Ali Abdullah, a wealthy landowner there. At first rebelling, Bol was regularly beaten and locked up in chains at night before he settled down and won Abdullah's trust to go out in the fields alone. And then he slept, however, in the rain with the cows that he tended, and he ate from garbage cans. While tending the cows in the fields, Bol was able to jump aboard a train bound for Khartoum and made his escape. With the help of 2 fellow Dinkas, Bol found a refugee camp and was allowed to attend school, but was forced to speak only Arabic and learn the Islamic faith. In 1998, Bol was smuggled from Khartoum to Egypt via their underground railroad. He was a teenager and found there was no hope in Egypt and no respect for Africans either. He and others survived with the protection of their tight-knit Sudanese community. Bol learns the UN was offering asylum for persecuted Sudanese. And a friend wrote up Bol's story in English and sent it to the UN Cairo office. Bol Gai was one of many granted an interview, but it was only he who was one of 10 allowed to go forward. He came to the United States and eventually learned English and began to even teach as an associate professor of Homeland Security at Virginia Commonwealth University. Bol Gai currently is an activist for his nation of South Sudan and has led protests in front of the White House to reimpose sanctions on Sudan, a country that is actively trying to obtain South Sudanese land, a majority Christian country. Bol Gai knows that Islam equals slavery and infiltration until an entire nation is in chains. Bol Gai is a published author also who has written these following books: The Legacy of African Freedom Fighter, children's books by J. Tinsley, Cobb, Freedom, A Lost Boy, His Cows, Their Journey, Arab, Racism in Kush, and Bol Gai Deng's website for all of you to take down and notice is kushdemocraticmajority.org. That's www.kushdemocraticmajority.org. Bol Gai Deng, welcome to Quorum Radio. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
That's fantastic. Well, listen, you've got an incredible story. Sadly, there are so many other people who don't have a voice. They're currently slaves in Africa, slaves because of Islam, and they're living in precarious situations just like you did when you were just a young boy. What's the message that you want to tell Americans right now, gripped by the Black Lives Matter movement, gripped by, demands for reparations? What's your reaction to all this?
Thank you, Bill, for giving me a chance to speak. And actually, have you learned from my bio that the struggle that I went through and I made it to the United States. And my message to the Black Lives Matter and the rest of the U.S. American citizen is that slavery still exists. Slavery still exists in Sudan. Slavery still exists in Mauritania. And slavery still exists in Libya right now. So in Africa, we still have a slavery. And no one is trying to address this issue, except someone like me who was given a chance to come to the United States. Now I have a voice to speak up and share my story with you and the rest of your audience. And the majority of slaves right now, they're still in the market and action, and they have no voice. So I'm here to speak on behalf of those who are still in captivity right now in Sudan and all over Africa, particularly in North Africa. And these are the issues that I believe that America should pay attention and to look at this slavery that still exists in Africa right now. And that is my message. When it comes to Black Lives Matter, I think also they should focus on this issue. That yes, we have a concern in America, but we can address this concern in a legal way. Racism, we can address this, and we have a system here in America that can address this issue in a legal matter, and it could be fast and address this matter, whether police brutality or other concern, the way we live in the U.S. But the big issues now that slavery has been going on for 400 years ago still exists in Africa, and no one is willing to speak about this. The African leaders ahead of the state, they failed to address this issue. The African activists, they refuse not to address this issue. The churches, they refuse to address this issue, and this issue is still going on. And this is not just a kidnapping issue. This is a slavery that still exists. When the attackers have been organized by the name of Islamic faith to come and attack Africans, to wipe them out and take their land away from them, and take that woman to be used as sexual manner. And these are the issues that have been going on, son, and they said they never stop. And when I was kidnapped, I was with more than 700 kids and women and children and girls. And I was a little bit young. I did not realize maybe there could be more. And the attackers been doing this beyond 1987. They've been doing this in 1998 and 1993, and it go on until 2000. So you could imagine how many kids have been enslaved in Sudan, and they've been smuggled from the south to the western Darfur, all the way to Libya. And this has been going on from the desert very much to Libya to Mediterranean Sea. So this has been going on for a long time.
The question I want to ask you is, so you want to become president of South Sudan. Tell me what you want to do for your country. Tell me what you want to do to be able to make it into a stable African state.
What I want to do, I want to stop the war that's going on in the country. The war that was designed and organized by the government. The government is the one actually designed the war by using the ethnic tribal line to divide the community and to divide them and to rule them. So the system that actually it was well organized after we got independent from the North, the same system that we left in the North is still the same system we have in South Sudan. Because most of these revolutionaries who were fighting at the time, a lot of them adopt the Islamic culture and the Arab culture and used to kill their own African citizens or to oppress their own citizens. So we believe that we have to stop the war to bring the peace to the country. And instead for us to do that, we actually demand the people of South Sudan, they have to have a voice because that the one who can choose the leader, can elect the leader. In order for us to do that, we need to call election for the South Sudanese to elect our own leader, because democracy is something that we fought for in 1983, because most of South Sudanese, they fought so they can be free from the Arabism and Islamism, so they can have their own Christian nation where people can be allowed to vote freely. That was the intention of the war. So now they have their own land. It's a time for them to be given a chance to choose their leader. And that is the issue that we are focused on. We believe also South Sudan could be a basket of Africa, where actually development, it could be the main factor. We'll be able to build and put education in place, education system, and also the facilities of Medicare and other things that the African women and children need. That's the thing that we are focused on it in my campaign. These are the things that we mentioned that we can do for them. Now the government that we have, they have failed the people of South Sudan. The corruption that very much is become a way of life in South Sudan by the South Sudanese elite is something we have to stop the corruption, because the corruption is the one destroying the country. These are our focus. We have a lot in our plate that we have to pursue to bring a peaceful nation of South Sudan.
Are there also, I want to ask you a question, Golbai, are there any products made by South Sudanese that people can buy on Amazon or that they can buy from a foundation that can help raise funds? Is there anything that you know about?
No, actually, and this is one of the reasons we believe that South Sudan as a sovereign nation is supposed to have their own products. And the government felt after we got independent, most of the money that was given by the international community, and particularly the United States. The United States donated about 40 billion. I'm talking about 14 billion was given by the United States for the development in South Sudan. Those money went to the pockets for the South Sudan corrupt leaders. They divide the money. They're supposed to use those money so the South Sudan can produce their own product as a new nation. They failed to do that, and they stole the money, and then they fight over those money. Mostly 75 South Sudan officials, South Sudan leaders, they divide the money and they build houses in Uganda and Kenya. A lot of them even bought houses right here in America. A lot of them went to Australia and UK and bought houses there. So the money have been divided by the leaders, and then they start the war among themselves. So we are looking forward in our team, in our my candidacy, to make sure that South Sudan be able to produce and have a factory where they can employ their own citizens, be able to have their own product made in South Sudan. Now, what we have in South Sudan is the women using their own culture, skill to design things in their own way, to put them in the market, which actually something has been used in the hand. It doesn't get ahead to be very much exported outside. So the issue that we are facing in South Sudan is that South Sudan have no manufacturing, have no factory in the country right now that it can employ their own citizens. The only what South Sudan rely on is the oil. And the oil actually was very much, the money of the oil, it was controlled by the leaders. So mostly money, the oil money go to the leadership. And the leadership actually use those money for their own benefit, not the citizen benefit. So we believe that in my leadership now, we are going to focus to have something that have to be made in South Sudan, where actually South Sudan will be able to have a product they can be able to ship outside of the country.
Right. And so right now, you know, your country is, it's fairly large. How many square miles is it? Bol Gai?
It's very large. South Sudan can combine Uganda and part of Kenya because it's a big country. Before South Sudan gained independence, actually South Sudan is the largest country in Africa. The biggest country in Africa is the Sudan. And when South Sudan broke away, it's still large compared to the East African nation. Let's say Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, Rwanda. South Sudan is still the biggest country when it comes to East African region. And that is what is going on. South Sudan have a big land, and South Sudan do not have people, because the people have been killed by the war that was going on with Islamists that were pursuing the Sudan to be Islamic and Arabic states. That actually killed more than 2.5 million from 1983 all the way to 2005. Before that also, there was a war that went on, killed 1.5 million in 1960 all the way to 1972. But not only the war have killed the South Sudanese, the slavery also very much reduced the citizens of South Sudan, because most of South Sudanese have been kidnapped by the Islamic militants to the slavery. And those slave Africans was not count on the population of South Sudanese. And that's been going on from 1700 all the way to 1800 and been even beyond 700. So if you calculate that, you talk about millions that have been taken to Arabia, and a lot of them end up dying. They did not reach Europe because they have been used as a domestic labor. A lot of them die in the Middle East. They didn't make it to the Europe. But let's say the population of South Sudan have been killed by the Islamic militants and the Arabs fundamentalists. To this day, we're still fighting that. It never stops, and it will not stop.
So let me ask you a question. I have a question. So how many people currently live in South Sudan?
But we're based on census of 2011, it would say about 14 million.
14 million people.
14 million people. But during the time of war, now a lot of them went to.
Sure.
A lot of them went to very much to East African region, and a lot of them right now, the refugees came, about 2.4 million are living in refugees camp, and that in Uganda and Kenya. So you would say that roughly, if that a lot of people now live in refugees camp, it means that what we have now is about maybe 10 or 11 million that live in the country.
Right. And okay. Well, let me ask you this about your country. It's in terms of agriculture. How important is the agricultural sector of South Sudan? Is it a fertile country? Is it a country with very productive farmland?
Yes. South Sudan is very productive agricultural land, and that's what South Sudan is good at it. And is flat land, have no mountain, very much. Is a flat. So this land is very much is agricultural land, and that's how South Sudan has been living for centuries and millennium through agriculture. They did not have factory manufacturers, and even when the Sudan was actually, the country have been controlled by the government of center of Khartoum. They never had a chance to control the South Sudanese. South Sudanese, they were independent in their own way. They feed themselves through the agriculture. Agriculture is the main factor in South Sudan. If South Sudan have to get ahead to become a nation, that wealthy nation, they need to rely on agriculture. And that actually very much is the main income and the main could be the main factor of the country to move forward. And because of the land of South Sudan produce sort of any very much thing they have to relate to agriculture could be produced in South Sudan. And that's why it's so important for nation to go back, not to focus on oil, not to focus on gold and uranium and other things, the animal resources also is another income in South Sudan, because South Sudan have the largest animal in Africa. Whether you talk about elephant, you talk about the deer, you talk about the lion, you talk about other things. So these are exist in South Sudan. So these animal resources and also the agriculture are the main factor that South Sudan can move ahead without focus on. Oil could be another factor as well, but oil should not be the main focus. Now the government of South Sudan use the oil as the main focus, which can bring the income to the nation. Now let the more without jobs, you cannot create the jobs that the South Sudanese can rely on. They say South Sudan do not have been a way to form agriculture in nation where, let's say tractors and other things were not brought by the government. Now the South Sudan is still using the traditional way of farming by using their own hand to form their own agriculture, their own food, so they can be able to produce for their families. So the majority of South Sudan are still using their hand right now than using tractors. As a nation that's supposed to rise, they're supposed to work with other nations and bring tractors that they can be able to use to benefit, to have the citizen, but they never done that. A lot of the tractors, that few of them was brought, was used by the elites. The leaders are the one benefiting, using them for their own benefit. So it was not the citizen that benefit from it. So that the nation, very much, the leaders do not care about their own citizens. That's what's going on in South Sudan.
Well, okay. So listen, thanks a lot, Bol Gai Deng, for being on Quorum Radio, WRMI. Your website again, I guess, is kushdemocraticmajority.org. Kush is spelled Kush, kushdemocraticmajority.org. Yes, and
yeah.
Well, I was going to say, Bol Gai, that if we go back centuries, if we go back before the American Revolutionary War, if we go back to, the 17th century, the 16th century, the 15th, 14th century, there was a tremendous amount of slavery involving white European victims. And they were seized in their countries by Muslim slave raiders from North Africa. And they sought, and they were successful in many cases, they took away thousands of Europeans into bondage in Africa. Well, tell me, why is it that Islam does this?
That is a good question you asked me. That have been the tactics of the founding father of Islam, which a lot of people call him Muhammad. Yeah. He was the founding father of Islam. He was a warrior. He actually defined Islam based on fight. You have to win by kidnapping, enslaving. That is the faith that most of the Muslim believers share, and that it was written also in their books. There's nothing that does not lie about it. You speak Arabic like me, I will tell you the truth. These have been written in their own Quran, and they've been practicing this as a way of life. Most of the slavery have been going on in Africa before even Europeans arrived to Africa in 9th century. It was very much the Muslim faith that practiced slavery in Africa. Even when the Europeans arrived during the Queen Victoria leadership in the United Kingdom, they find themselves out that there was a slavery going on in Africa, and the African will be wiped out, when Africa used to be described as the darkness continent. And they were kind of shocking. And most of the explorers, European that went from United Kingdom, went that they were forced to take a slave with them, because if they don't do so, their life was in danger too. They have to at least to take a slave with them to Europe. That's how the Atlantic Ocean slave trade started, because some of Europeans actually have been forced to take a slave, because back then they need money. And most of the African, they were used as domestic slavery in Africa from 9th century all the way to 14th century. This began in Africa, and whether the region called Sudan today, back then used to be called Nubian, or you call Ethiopia, you call Kush. Even the Uganda territory had been going on in Egypt. Egypt actually been benefiting from slavery because they use the income for them, because the slave was investment for them, basically, and to Arabians, particularly in the North Africa. So the European also, they've been a victim. But in many ways, in many cases, when it comes to Africa, we actually we were not able to address the issue of the Islamic slavery, slave trades, because most of the African leaders felt the history of Islam, they felt the history of the Arabians, and they focus on Europeans that the African was taking to Europe. This is the culture of those Muslim faith. It's still going on, and it never stops. So, and that's why I'm here today. I didn't come to America because I know America. I didn't come to America because I had money. I did not come to America because I have uncle or cousin. I come to America because I was seeking for protection, because I was not protected in my own country, in my own land. So now I'm here to become the voice of my African slave women and children. And they still, today, their story never been told until this day.
How many, do you have any idea, any statistics on how many African slaves are in bondage and captivity now, today in Africa? How many slaves are there right now?
According to, in my own situation in Sudan, according to Christian International Solidarity, who mostly released some slaves in 2000 and go back 2001, 2005, there were actually more than 35,000 young men and women still in the captivity in Sudan. That alone in Sudan.
Amazing.
If you talk about, yes. So that is the number, according to Christian Solidarity International. It was actually involving to actually convene the slave master to release the slave and to go home to their own motherland in South Sudan when South Sudan got independent. The Christian Solidarity International was kicked out from United Nations because for advocating for African slaves, because the United Nations, most of the majority of the Arab nations, they feel embarrassed because this organization was actually telling the truth, and was kicked out from the United Nations very much membership when it used to come and advocate the United Nations Security Council about the slavery in Sudan. So he got kicked out. So that's the numbers in Sudan, but when it comes to Africa, it could be large. It could go to 1,000 and even to 1 million, because most of the African, they are in bondage right now in Libya, and they are way to Europe, they are way to Italy, they are way to Germany. A lot of them, they've been enslaved in domestic slave, and they use and they sell them in the market. And one African man and woman, cost about $400 or maybe $600. It depends who you bought in that market or you buy in that market. So these are the issues that are going on right now, and the African are not talking about this. The Black Lives Matter do not even bother to talk about this. These are issues that I want the Black Lives Matter to focus on if they really care about the Black people, or they care about Black people Lives Matter. And I think that those people, African in the market, I think that lives matter as well as those in America, that lives matter. But I don't think that there's any involvement by these activists in any time soon. And also my own observation based on what is going on in America, I believe Black Lives Matter does not represent the African American concern. It represents the interests of those who want to destroy America. They are not focusing for the real issue. They have their own agenda. And that's why mostly people are watching Black Lives Matter very carefully, because it doesn't represent the interests of the young man that killed in Minnesota or anywhere, because now it turned to another issue. Some individuals, some Islamists who maybe could be ISIS are involved, because a lot of them, they feel like this is the chance for them to destroy America. Because a lot of them, they've been defeated by Buja demonstration, by trauma demonstration. A lot of them, they lost the war in Libya, they lost the war in Iraq, they lost the war. Now a lot of them, they come as immigrants here, they have different intention to fight within. That's the issue that now the Black Lives Matter turned to. More, if you guys watching very carefully, a lot of them do not represent the African Americans who are victim in many ways. In many cases, the young people are victim in many cases by the police brutality. That is now turned to a different case, and that's what most of us are concerned and watch the Black Lives Matter in different way, have different opinion.
And Grandmaster Jay is over an organization that he claims has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter. They were in Georgia about 2 weeks ago, and I believe it was on Independence Day. They're called the NFAC. I can't say the words. And basically, they're armed black militants. They have weapons. They were parading at Stone Mountain. And, you know, with people like that, if they were to travel to South Sudan to go to Sudan and free black slaves, would they be well received in South Sudan?
Indeed, they will be received because they come to protect these slaves. Because the reason why most of the Africans become victim globally, worldwide, is because of the slavery. And most of the African in Europe and everywhere in the United States are not aware about the history of the slavery. A lot of them, they just take it from here. They never went back. How did the slavery occur in Africa? How it was organized? Actually, the slave was organized by Muslim faith. It was not by the African Christian, by the way. It was by the African Muslim black Arab who actually converted to Islam, who was used to kidnap their own Africans and sell them to their Arab masters. That had been the case in Sudan, and it's still going on now.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you a question. Since slavery is still going on now in Africa, in the Sudan, where there are tens of thousands of Africans that are today, 2020, in slavery, what do you have to say to Grandmaster Jay? Grandmaster Jay has said that you know, they're tired, they're sick and tired of oppression. What invitation can you offer Grandmaster Jay about going to Sudan and going to Africa to free the black people in slavery today?
You know, I would ask him if he's very concerned about the slavery. I think he should contact me and my team so we can go to South Sudan or maybe go to Sudan and help those who slave. So, and also we can go to Libya. That's where this problem is. And also they can also learn about the history of the slavery and with facts, not just with the assumption, because a lot of the people here in the diaspora, and we call it diaspora actually, people that live in America or maybe in Europe, a lot of these people, they took information based on what they read and what they get online, and but it's not the real facts because they never speak to African have been enslaved, slavery, captivity, maybe an auction. People like me who actually lived it. People like me are witness, beating and put the chain in the hand. I'm not talking about my grandfather. My grandfather was a slave. My uncle, they were kidnapped. I never find them until this day. I'm talking about my own story. If they're really concerned, they should talk to me. That's what I went through and I'm still going through. But by the way, when I came to the United States of America, I didn't know anything. I did not even know how to speak English. I never heard of United States of America. What I heard was the USA. As soon as I reached Egypt, there's something called USA. That's all that I know. 3 letters. I don't know what it means, what it stands for. I did not know anything. But thank God now that my eyes are open. I know better now. I learned, not only I learned English, I was actually learning Arabic at the time I was in captivity. I know how to speak Arabic really well. I can compare the culture between the European culture, maybe the American culture, and other race culture. And I can actually distinguish what bad and what good. And I think that whoever that person you mentioned, if he's really concerned about
His name, yeah, excuse me, go by. His name is Grand Master J of the NFAC.
okay.
And so, what
Grandmaster-
website should Grandmaster J and his followers go to help free slaves today in Africa?
You know, Grandmaster J should actually help us to go and liberate our young men and women in the slave market. That's something I can send to him, and that the message I actually appeal to him to help me and contact my teams, and we can actually help him to go how we can go and liberate these people.
It's www.kushdemocraticmajority.org.
That is my message to him, and also to learn the facts about what's going on in Africa. And why it's still going on until this day, why nothing has been done by the African leaders, why African leaders are so silent, why the Africans are now African after the colonial, they describe it now, they have independent states. Why the head of the African Union are not addressing this issue? Why they're compromising the human right of these slave African women and children? Why they compromise their human rights with these individuals who come to attack them in their land? And they invade them, they take their land, they take the cattle, they take the animals, they take the cow, they burn down the houses to issues. So why are not doing anything about it? And I think that we have a lot to discuss, and I will look forward to talking.
And we wish Godspeed to you in your political efforts to become president of South Sudan, and we hope we can have you on Quorum Radio again.